It's gonna be warm. I've been sitting there for 3 hours. What it costs? Less than for your just when you're high, about Essentially, New York. You know, it's very much, right? We have one car, we have a home, we have both cars, we have a school, he carries one, you know, we have
so far, I was there you are. How's it?
was over at Energy Forum
Oh yeah. Yeah. What did you say? I was going to say, was it positive?
Yeah, generally. Definitely clearly happening.
Right.
That's not
Mayor McCallum has said yes, but it's possible he won't be here because he may be in another meeting. And Supervisor Councilman Buscaino is
He's out of
not
the
going to
country.
be here. Yeah.
I thought Mayor McCallum was at a metro.
He said he most likely would have.
Yeah. So we still have quorum with 3 members.
Okay. You have a quorum with 3?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, whenever you're ready, let's get started.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we need to establish a quorum and make a roll call.
Supervisor, we have a quorum with 3 board members. It's you, Councilmember Robinson, and Supervisor Rutherford.
Okay. And I can't see the other person there. Hold on. Okay, I can see half of Supervisor Rutherford now.
Which half do you want?
They're all good, you know? All right, and so we do have a quorum. All right, very good. And do we expect anybody else, or we go ahead and get started?
I think we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. All right, so we'll call to order the Technology Committee meeting for the 22nd of July. And we will move to the first item. And Mr. Dean Ciato is going to present, I guess. Dean, is that you?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Benoit.
Mm-hmm.
This item is to recognize, transfer, and appropriate funds for the EFMP program, and to issue an RFP for the continued implementation for the program. As means of background, the EFMP program is a voluntary scrap and replace program for light and medium duty vehicles, and it's available to low-income consumers, and there are additional incentives values for vouchers up to $9,500 for those low-income consumers that live in disadvantaged communities. Previously, the governing board approved funding from CARB in the combined amounts of $8.8 million for maybe $118 in the greenhouse gas reduction funds. And these funds were matched with local funding from the SCAQMD and MSRC, totaling up to $14.2 million. The EFMP pilot program in the South Coast has been ongoing since May of 2015 and has been met with higher than anticipated number of requested vouchers. To date, we've processed over 830 voucher applications and have greater than 1,500 on the waiting list. Some statistics regarding the approved vouchers to date include that 94% of the vouchers, the consumers reside in disadvantaged communities. 77% of the vouchers issued were from the EFMP Plus Up program. And the income level participation, 90% of the consumers met the 225% of the federal poverty level, 7% were at 300%, and 3% were at the 400% level. The average interest rates of vehicle loans were 5.37%, with the average fuel economy improvement up to 40 miles per gallon. Approximately 280 vouchers that were approved were from local funding dollars. In terms of the types of vehicles that were replaced, were replacement vehicles in this program, you could see that 129 of the vehicles were dedicated battery electric, 180 were plug-in hybrids, 349 were conventional hybrids, and 170 were conventional gasoline vehicles with increased miles per gallon fuel economy rating. To quickly cover the new anticipated funding that we anticipate getting from the state of California, we anticipate in the next month getting $3.7 million from AB 118 for the EFMP base program. We are hopeful of getting up to $10 million for the EFMP Plus Up program from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And the staff proposal is to use the remaining AQMD local funding between AQMD and MSRC to match the state funding for base case and Plus Up. Staff is proposing for purposes of implementing the EFMP program in fiscal year 16-17 to release an RFP for case management services, emissions testing, and continued outreach. The current contracts with our 3 contractors are expiring at the end of calendar year 2016. So we hope to go with an RFP for the continued implementation of the program in calendar year 2017. Staff is recommending actions to recognize up to $3.7 million from the state for the EFMP base and authorize the executive officer to enter into agreement with CARB for the EFMP base case. In addition, we're recognizing up to $10 million from CARB for the EFMP Plus Up from the cap and trade program or the greenhouse gas reduction, and also will enter into an interagency agreement for the EFMP Plus Up funds. And we're also recommending the transfer of just over $2 million from the AB 923 to the HEROES 2 Special Revenue Fund 56 to cover the cost of vouchers. Furthermore, staff is recommending the release of an RFP for purposes of case management work and emissions testing for the EFMP base and Plus Up program. And finally, staff is recommending the authorization of the EO to approve vouchers in amount not to exceed $16.15 million. And that concludes staff's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments or questions from members? Okay, seeing none, I'd just say it's a good program. We need to do as much as we can. It sounds like we've got some good additional resources we can put at it. So with that, I would look for a motion.
I'll move the item.
Okay, I'll second it. All in favor? Or do we need to do a roll? That's right, I'm sorry.
Roll call, Supervisor.
Councilmember Robinson?
Yeah, go ahead.
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford?
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit?
Aye.
Motion passes 3 ayes.
Okay, thank you. That'll take us then to item number 2. And who's presenting on this one? I forgot.
Adewale?
Hold on. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Benoit and members of the committee. Again, my name is Adewale Oshinuga. The item before you is to recognize funds and execute contracts for in-use emissions testing and fuel usage profile of on-road heavy-duty vehicles. On-road heavy-duty engines, majority of on-road heavy-duty engines are certified at or below 0.2 grams NOx and 0.01 gram PM. In some cases, however, some of these in-use emissions from some of these engines may be higher than the emissions under which they were certified. And at the same time, we are beginning to see increased number of vehicles with newer technologies. Because of that, staff anticipates significant reduction in both NOx and PM emissions from these engines when compared to the older engines. Also, we now have natural gas engines that are certified at 0.02 grams, more than 90% cleaner than the current engine or the current emission standards. For this reason, we wanted to assess the performance of these engines as the vehicle aged. As a result, the board in April of this year issued an RFP to conduct in-use emissions tests as well as fuel usage profile of these vehicles. So the scope of the RFP includes the following. First, to collect and analyze vehicle activity data as well as real-time emissions. Second, to conduct in-use emissions testing of up to 200 heavy-duty vehicles. The test metrics for this exercise includes 100 goods movement trucks, 40 delivery trucks, 30 refuse trucks, and 30 of combined school and transit buses. The fuels of choice are as follows: natural gas, renewable natural gas, the conventional diesel, as well as the renewable diesel, as well as the alternative fuels. Here we define alternative fuel to include the hybrid and all-electric technologies. Also, the scope of the RFP also includes the assessment of the impact of technology as well as the fuel on fuel consumption and in-use emissions from these vehicles. And finally, we intend to match the technology to vocation so that we can maximize the benefits of those technologies. So the RFP, we received 3 response from that RFP from University of California, Riverside, West Virginia University, and California Environmental Engineering. The proposals were reviewed by 4-member panel consisting of an individual from South Coast SCAQMD, California Air Resources Board, one from CEC, which is the California Energy Commission, and one outside technical expert. This is the result of the evaluation. West Virginia University scored 60 points for the technical, 30 points for the cost, for a total score of 90 points. University of California, Riverside scored 64 for the technical, 15 for the cost, for a total score of 79. The third proposal, which was from California Environmental Engineering, was scored at lower than 56 for the technical proposal, but meaning that the proposal is not technically viable to be moved forward for consideration. As a result, staff did not review or assess the cost proposal for that for California Environmental Engineering. So as a result of this evaluation, staff recommends that contracts be awarded to University of California, Riverside, and West Virginia University. The reason for this recommendation is as follows. We, both UCR and West Virginia University, have conducted a previously similar in-use emission study for us as well as for California Air Resources Board and US EPA. Also, they've done numerous work in this area, even though it is not as complex and as broad as this particular study is, but they've done a lot of work for both the public agencies as well as private entities. Also, both labs have equipment that is crucial to the success of the project. One, they have a chassis dynamometer. Chassis dynamometer, of course, is a common equipment among labs in the sense that it is used here to measure the emissions from vehicles. In this particular case, I would say heavy-duty vehicles. What most labs lack is the transportable lab. Transportable lab here, of course, both UC Riverside and West Virginia do have this transportable lab. The transportable lab is a EPA compliant lab, which is placed on the flatbed of trucks and connected to the exhaust of the truck, so that as the truck is driven, the emissions is measured at the real time. And also, both UCR and West Virginia have experienced team, individuals that are very experienced in emission testing as well as the engine, vehicle, and after-treatment technologies. So finally, the question that comes up is, why do we select 2, not 1? Well, the reason for that is because of the complexity and the breadth of the project. I said earlier that this is going to involve 200 vehicles. Those 200 vehicles have to be recruited. They have to be instrumented with tools that will enable them to measure both the vehicle activity data as well as emissions. They have to take subset of those 200 vehicles and do chassis testing as well as transportable testing. And after doing all of that, you have to write a report, you have to interpret, and at the same time, do all of this in a timely fashion. And finally, we want redundancy because we want to be able to test the integrity of the emission result. So when you couple both the complexity and the breadth and the redundancy, it is obvious that we definitely need more than one lab to do the job, equally qualified to do the job for us. In terms of funding, CEC is providing $2 million to this project. CARB, $150,000. Southern California Gas Company is providing $500,000, and of course, staff is requesting $600,000 from the board for a total of $3.25 million. Finally, staff recommended actions are as follows. 1, to recognize upon receipt up to $150,000 from CARB and be placed into clean fuel funds to conduct the in-use emission study. 2nd, to execute contract with West Virginia and UCR in an amount not to exceed $1.625 million each from the clean fuel funds to conduct the in-use emission study. Thank you.
I just have a couple comments.
It's a very reasonable. Go ahead. Thank you.
First, I just want to say thanks for the explanation on the transportable lab. That answered a lot of questions that I had, so appreciate that explanation. I mentioned when we were looking at the RFP back in April about weight issues when we're testing for both fuel use and efficiency, and so I just want to make sure that somehow stays a part of this testing, so that the cargo weight, especially on the delivery trucks and the heavyweight trucks, I think probably the refuse trucks and the school buses and things of that nature are going to have a pretty consistent weight, but those other two could have something pretty significant disparities there, and I know a few companies that are testing out electric, call them heavy duty trucks, but they can only handle so much. They're starting to see when they're moving cargo around that obviously the battery power is being impacted pretty significantly depending on the weight. And I've talked to one that's testing it who he was taking what he considered to be a fairly short trip of about 50 miles with a 75-mile range, and because of the weight, they ran out of battery power about 15 miles short. So they only got about half of what they expected, and then they had about a $700 tow. And he said it's not going to take very many of those before he's going to just park that electric truck and not use it at all. So I just want to make sure that part was mentioned again. And then I have to say I'm a little disappointed that, you know, this is focusing on technology impacting mobile sources, and we're contributing 4 times the amount that CARB is. I'd really like to see them be more involved in things like this. So, but it was just my comments. So thanks. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. You know, that was a point I was going to make too, is looking at the breakdown. I know staff spent a lot of time. There's probably been a lot of negotiations between agencies, but could someone kind of enlighten us a little bit about how it's determined what percentage CARB does versus CEC versus AQMD?
Supervisor Benoit, this is Henry Hogo. We do push hard on CARB, and we're fortunate just to get 150,000, although it's disappointing from their end. The CARB looks at themselves as more of a regulatory agency, but they do separately in-use emissions testing. So they felt that they provide this to as part of an independent group of testing with the Energy Commission and Southern California Gas Company, but they do their own in-use testing for compliance purposes. So they wanted to count that as part of it. But we were able to get this funding. The Energy Commission, on the other hand, is spending millions of dollars towards alternative fuel vehicles, and they would like to know the benefits of the testing of the actual end-use emissions. And as you may recall, our testing 2 years ago, we did see that for natural gas trucks that the NOx emissions were lower than the diesel equivalent, even though both engines were certified to the same standard. In addition, we found that for diesel-powered trucks that operate with selective catalytic reduction technology, that they didn't work well under low temperature, low speed conditions. So they actually emitted more than their certification level. So it bears out the fact that we need to do more on the technology for diesel trucks. And CARB has seen this independently, and they have started to look at doing new regulations to control that portions of the emission cycle. So we do work together with CARB, but unfortunately we just don't get a lot of money from them for these projects.
Understand. It sounds like they think they spend their fair share on other projects related to the same stuff. So any further questions or comments, colleagues?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the item.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford?
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit?
Aye. Thank you very much. And that then will take us to item number 3. And Patricia now is going to present, I believe.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Patricia Kwan. I'm in the Technology Demonstration Group. So I present, no, that's fine. This is an item to recognize and appropriate funds and execute a contract for EV charger installation services at our headquarters. So as you'll probably recall, I was here in May and the board approved a contract with EV Connect for EV charger installation services. However, in June, EV Connect informed us that they no longer are performing those services. So staff would like to propose going to awarding the contract to the next highest scored proposal, which is Clean Fuel Connection. We asked Clean Fuel Connection to come out and rebid the contract to see if we could get somewhat of a cost savings from their original proposal. Their bid is still, it's about $184,000 higher than the amount approved in May by the board. The schedule would be to complete the work by the end of the year. So it's still the same scope of work, which is to install an additional 110 EV chargers, level 2, following the approved construction plans. Obviously, we'd be working in multiple areas of the parking lot at the same time to minimize facility disruption. So the schedule would be, we would go to the board in September for approval. If approved, we would execute the contract, and we would work in phases between September and then the end of the year, with the final permit sign-off to take place no later than December 31st. So our recommended actions are to recognize and appropriate this additional funding from the Clean Fuels Fund into SDA's budget, into capital outlays major object, and to execute the contract with Clean Fuel Connection for $805,219 from this same fund. So I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Any questions, colleagues?
Just real quick, what happened with EV Connect? I mean, it seems pretty strange that we're approving one in May and then they're backing
yes.
out in June, so.
They actually had made a business decision to pull out of doing installation services altogether and to focus basically on software and being a network provider. They felt that for the long run, that was a better business model. And because of the hardware selection we had previously made, we weren't going to be able to use EV Connect software. So hence, doing the installation at our facility would enable them to have their software at our headquarters at the same time. So it was actually primarily a business decision that they made, which unfortunately they informed us after we received board approval.
They had a meeting with us and informed us actually they haven't renewed their license, so they are actually completely out of this business.
Just seems really, seems strange that they'd make a decision so quickly and they'd be going through an RFP process and, you know, wouldn't have told us ahead of time. So again, it's disappointing.
Yes.
Concur with that, but it doesn't change the situation much, so.
It doesn't.
Do we have a motion on this yet?
No, I'll move the item.
I'll second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford?
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit?
Aye.
Motion passes 3 ayes.
Okay, that takes us to item number 4. Elisa Nurasola.
Supervisor Benoit, as I explained to you yesterday, staff is pulling this item to next month because we had issues with
Oh, that's right.
campaign contribution forms.
I apologize.
Yes, so we will bring this
Right.
up to you next month.
Thank you for the reminder. Let's move on to item number 5, contract for renewable gas production vehicle demonstration project. And let's see here, Mr. Barry going to present?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I'm going to give a quick overview of a report on a planned renewable natural gas production facility locally in Rialto. So just as a way of some background, renewable natural gas, also called biogas, generally speaking, comes from a variety of different sources. It could be from food waste, it could be from dairy gas, as well as waste from municipal wastewater plants. And this particular feedstock is going to be biosolids or solid materials that come from wastewater treatment plants in Los Angeles County. Based on this feedstock, the biogas can have very little greenhouse gas impacts or even negative greenhouse gas impacts relative to fossil fuels. And as we've had the discussions earlier in Technology Committee and part of our draft SCAQMD, the use of renewable natural gas combined with low NOx or 0.02 gram per brake horsepower hour natural gas engines is really a key strategy. So we think this project kind of fits that very well. And as the committee is aware, and Adewale mentioned earlier, the 8.9 liter near zero emission natural gas engine is already certified, and the process is already underway to certify or develop and certify the 6 liter and 12 liter options as well. by the end of 2009, or excuse me, by 2019, we expect certification for those. So Core Infrastructure is a technology provider, and they've actually developed this process to produce renewable natural gas using the biosolids, and actually had a 6-year pilot program at LA County Sanitation District, and they're leveraging that particular technology and their refinement of their initial processes to develop a larger plant. So the proposal before you today is really to develop this production plant in Rialto, looking at about producing 1,000 gallons or gasoline gallon equivalents of natural gas on a daily basis. Phase 1 has already been initiated. Staff, including Mr. Nastri and Dr. Miyasato and myself, went to their facility and saw the equipment for their dryers and pyrolyzers. And those equipment have already been issued a permit to construct. And they're actually in the process of getting some final site permits to start developing the facility in Rialto. Phase 2, however, includes some of the areas where our focus would be, which is the methanation portion of that plant, the compression portion of that plant. And then also they plan to convert one of their diesel vehicles to operate on natural gas. And then continue to work with local fleets that have actually gotten incentive monies from us. An example is the Rialto Unified School District that can use a .02 natural gas engine in their school buses and then fuel at a local facility. And they're located very close to the Unified School District lot. So that's the area where our focus has been is in phase 2. And Core then requested us to cost share some of this, work with them, and basically the total project costs are estimated to be a little more than $25 million, and they're asking our cost share to be around 4%, so very small overall total project cost. So the staff recommendation is for the committee to approve the $1 million from the Clean Fuels Fund towards production of this RNG and then demonstration of the vehicles that can be done in our local city. With that, if I can answer the question.
Thank you. You know, I've got a couple of questions that have occurred to me since our briefing yesterday. As I was looking at this morning, it occurred to me that this is actually something we've heard before, but as I recall, at one point, we had actually solicited their moving into this area and moving this project forward. I think it has great potential to be a big part of our solution on a macro scale, getting to more cleaner natural gas engines into the fleet. But I thought they were in the $3 to $5 million range in support request from the SCAQMD at some point in time. I know that I note that we're talking about 4% support, and it seems to me that's fairly low for as interesting and unique and potentially valuable technology as we're looking at here. And I haven't toured this facility. Perhaps Supervisor Rutherford, you could comment on this. If this is a company worthy of support, I'm thinking that a 10% contribution instead of 4 might be more appropriate for this kind of a innovative process. Could you comment?
I've met with them and talked about it, and our area is certainly excited to have the project, but I haven't gone into financial detail with them, so I don't know if this is just the amount they need or this is just based on staff recommendation. I'm certainly open to looking at options because I'd like to see the project succeed.
Yeah, I would ask the staff. Wasn't there at one point with consideration of $3 or $4 million for this project?
I believe that was probably with CRNR, but we will also talk to Core Industries and see if for further expansion or further development of this project, more additional funding is necessary. But at the time being, the $1 million can get us to the 365,000 gallon a year production that we are thinking about. And the timeline actually fits very well with the timing that the 0.02 gram is going to be available. And we will also talk to CRNR regarding that project. If further funding is necessary, definitely we'll come back.
Yeah, this is very expensive technology and infrastructure to get there. And I know the CR&R is even a much bigger total price tag than this, but they have a tax base to go back to too. Mr. Nasser?
Well, I would say,
The funding request is based on their latest unsolicited proposal to staff, and we can certainly discuss with them their future plans to see if there's a need to supplement it, but the $1 million is based on their request to us.
Okay. And that request was, they weren't told how much to put in for?
I'm only responding off their unsolicited proposals.
Mr. Chairman, I know
Okay.
that I had spoken with them earlier, and I know that they had requested as much as possible. I know that staff looked at the valuation, how we could tie it into the demonstration of the fuels and so forth.
And the CR&R project is a different one, which may require, more funding, and we'll look at that and come back. We were gonna fund that project.
We can certainly
Okay.
look into the
Well,
possibility of more.
Okay, I think that this is one that we ought to track closely, and perhaps if there's a need, make sure that we're there to make sure that it gets moved forward. And it seems we do so many other projects, 4% seems like a very small investment for a project with the upside potential of this one.
Mr. Chair, I have one technical question.
Sure.
My folks are telling me that they've heard that there are some issues with RNG not performing with fuel cells, and wondering how that relates to what's happening here.
So typically speaking, the renewable natural gas can be used to produce renewable hydrogen in a steam reformation system. Generally speaking, is not fed into a mobile use fuel cell. Those are typically operated on hydrogen, but I can certainly look into that issue.
Well, are you also thinking of a
Thanks.
stationary fuel cell, perhaps, application from the RNG?
Perhaps the person who asked the question isn't here, so I don't know exactly.
Okay.
Just trying to collect information.
But staff
But
can
with that,
certainly-
Mr. Chair, I'll make the recommendation, or move staff recommendation with the caveat that we go back and look and see if there's further resources that we can allocate.
I fully support that motion, and I'll second it and ask the secretary to call the roll.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford?
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit?
Aye.
Motion passes 3 ayes.
Okay, that will bring us to item number 5, or number 6 rather. And Polidori, Madam Polidori, are you there?
Yes, there I am.
Okay. Oh, it's very good. Andrea.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. This item is to recognize revenue and appropriate funds to test and deploy low-cost sensors for monitoring ambient concentrations of both PM 2.5 and ozone. So just a little background. So the EPA's National Exposure Research Laboratory, NERL, is in the process of developing low-cost sensor devices for measuring PM 2.5 and ozone. These type of devices are also called portable observation devices, or PODs for short, and they typically include 2 different kinds of sensors. An optical particle counter for measuring PM 2.5 that costs about $400, and a metal oxide sensor for measuring ozone that is also about $400. So altogether, when we include the cost of cellular modem, other electronic devices, and the cost of a solar panel and a battery to power the device, we are talking about something in between $1,200 and $1,500 per unit. The NERL is very much interested in working with our own Air Quality Sensor Performance Evaluation Center, or AQSPEC, to test and characterize the performance of these pods. So back in March of this year, they sent us an RFQ for performing this characterization work, and we replied with the technical document proposing basically the following work. So the first part of the proposal would be to deploy 10 of their pods in the field at our Rubidoux station for about a month, and to basically to do some sort of side-by-side testing with our more expensive EPA-approved instrumentation. Just to give you an idea, each of our EPA-approved instruments cost about $20,000. So it would be a characterization, a comparison between low-cost sensors and very, more expensive and more reliable instruments. The second part of this testing includes basically we will bring back 3 of these pods to our laboratory, and we will perform a complete lab testing using our state-of-the-art characterization chamber that is able to generate different temperature and relative humidity conditions under controlled environments. So the second part of the proposal is basically a long-term field deployment of these pods. Here we are proposing to deploy these 10 pods at in 3 different areas of the South Coast Air Basin, and for a period of about 9 months. So although the specific location of for the deployment needs to be identified, generally speaking, we would like to deploy these pods near the port area. Also, a group of pods will be deployed in the Rubidoux area, where we have 2 monitoring stations, Rubidoux and Mira Loma. And the third group of pods will be deployed north of the Salton Sea. Also, it's important to note here that the AQSPEC team has also developed similar sensor test, low-cost sensor devices. We call it sensor boxes. Maybe we have to find a better name for that. But basically, they include the same type of sensors as the EPA's pods. So this will be a very interesting comparison between their pods, our sensor boxes, and some of our EPA-approved instrumentation. And the benefits to AQMD, basically this type of study will provide valuable information on performance, reliability, and especially durability of low-cost PM2.5 and ozone sensors, plus in-depth characterization of the spatial and temporal variability of PM2.5 and ozone in Southern California. And this type of study will also provide a template for developing future air monitoring networks that are based on low-cost sensor technology. And the recommended action are to recognize revenue of $101,900 into the general fund and appropriate $9,900 into science and technology advancement budget for this fiscal year. And the balance of $92,000 are already included in the science and technology advancement adopted budget for the year. And with this, I will take any question you might have.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. Any questions? I think it's nice when the national folks come to us and ask us for help because they recognize our position in the field to do that kind of work. So I am honored to move this item for approval.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford?
Aye.
Supervisor Benoit?
Aye.
Motion passes 3
Thank you. And that takes us to our final item, and it's an informational item, and we'll turn it over to Ms. Berry.
Good afternoon again. Just a quick overview of a meeting that was recently held at the South Coast AQMD. Earlier this year, staff was requested by the Environmental Defense Fund to help with a meeting where technology providers, policymakers, and other entities could come together and have a rather informal discussion, an informal setting where ideas could be hashed and recommendations could be made to implement or help implement some of these low emitting technologies. The discussion included zero emission fuel cell and battery electric, as well as advanced engine technologies, such as a low NOx engine that we talked about, and some engine technologies that are not fully commercialized yet, such as the hose piston, as well as some heat recovery items to increase the efficiency of existing internal combustion engines. Board member Liu and Senator Flores provided the AQMD and the ARB's perspective as an overview for this particular forum. And the California Energy Commission and Air Resources Board also played a big role in helping to shape the agenda and the meeting itself. This is a list of key participants, but I just wanted to show that there was a broad range of experts, many of whom the Technology Advancement Office works with on a regular basis, such as BYD, Cummins Westport, Odyne, US Hybrid, TransPower. These are all familiar names to us as either OEMs or the integrators of certain technology that we work very closely with these entities. In addition to CEC and ARB, we also had the US EPA and the Department of Energy participating. And then from an end user's perspective, we had the Port of Long Beach and certain terminal operators in Santa Monica Blue Bus that provided the end user perspective and also discussed and were instrumental in discussing some of the barriers as well. And then CalSTART, another NGO, also participated. There were 4 key sessions or panels with a moderator in each from the government or policymaker side and a private entity. And then the morning session focused mainly on the technologies that lower criteria and greenhouse gas emissions, and the afternoon focused on identifying barriers and pathways for implementing some of these technologies, and as well as potential cost savings and health benefits. Dr. Miyasato was one of the moderators for the engine and transmission panel, and then I'll capture some of the takeaways in the next few slides. The main takeaway for the forum was that indeed a variety of technologies are available today that can lower these emissions from traditional combustion technologies, as well as increasing the traffic efficiency, such as some programs with intelligent transportation systems that are under development. Further, more and more zero emission technologies are getting commercialized that provide service for certain duty cycles. The Technology Advancement Office, as you guys are well aware, is involved in most of these demonstrations and early commercializations. These include medium and heavy duty fuel cell buses and trucks. For example, over the last couple of months, staff has brought to you and you approved projects involving fuel cell UPS delivery trucks or vans, as well as full-size transit buses that will provide revenue service in OCTA. So those are just 2 examples of the recommendations from this particular committee that technologies getting to a point of being pre-commercial, even for zero-emission vehicles. The other main takeaway was that the policymakers need to send a strong regulatory signal that includes a combination of criteria pollutant requirements and meeting some of the greenhouse gas emission reduction goals that are present at the federal and the state levels. And to my surprise, actually, even the technology providers of traditional internal combustion engine, or at least a subset of them, were asking for actual dates and tailpipe standards. And they think that's a strong regulatory signal that is needed for them to be able to implement this technology in the nearer term, and also, as not much of a surprise, to grow the incentives program, not only in the fleet turnover, but also focus more and more on the technology development efforts to get them over that hurdle, to help them get to that commercial stage. I'm pleased to say the district's already implementing most of these recommendations. The AQMP already is leveraging these co-benefits of greenhouse gas reductions, petroleum reduction, and criteria pollutant reduction. The board's approved petition to the US EPA for a national standard for heavy-duty engines is exactly the signal that the recommendation from this particular forum was. And then, as you're well aware, and Fred has briefed you many times, the office is already involved in the demonstration, and especially up to $100 million a year in incentive programs. So I think as a district, we're already implementing a lot of those recommendations from this particular group. And also some of the technology providers suggested simplifying and expediting the certification process. Some of them felt that because of the complexity of state and national certification programs, it's easier for them to deploy these lower emitting technologies overseas, Europe and China, than it is in the US. And that's something staff's taking on to also see if there's a way to work with ARB and EPA to simplify some of those certification standards. And that's something that we'll be looking at as well. So that's a quick overview on this particular forum, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. the committee has.
Thank you for the presentation. Looked like a very auspicious group. Any other comments or questions, colleagues?
No.
I presume you're going to bring that to the full board for a similar presentation?
Sure, we'd be more than happy to do so.
I think it'd be worth making a short presentation, let them know. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Any public comments that I missed, or anybody there in any of the locations? I see no request to speak, have no request to speak on any item or any public comment. Seeing none and having completed the agenda, we'll consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you. Wednesday, I think it was, right after the 36th. And the representative from the Harbor Trucking Association was present.